it's very much like Protestant tradition. Yeah.
Also in Irish, like the language of Ireland, money is just called arrogant, and that's just silver. So it dates way back to Celtic times and older times.
Well, yeah, I mean, economists distinguish between invidious forms of wealth and absolute forms of wealth. And, so an economist, if they were here, would say, you can't have equality because some goods aren't necessarily comparative, like who gets a house in the best neighborhood. And to me, like, the measure of equality is sort of illusory. It's kind of a false start, because equality just means everybody's the same in some quality that you think is important. Because obviously you're not going to have everybody the same in everything. Who'd want that? We wouldn't want everybody to have the same possessions. You don't want the same stuff. But on the other hand, I wouldn't want a system where we could say everybody has stuff equivalent to the same amount of value, because that means you're imposing a single value. I don't want to do that either. I mean, in a way, like, you could say the ultimate equal society would be one where you can't measure anybody's quality, because people's things are just so completely different. What they're, somebody's trying to be like the greatest, like, Parcheesi player on earth, and someone else wants to, like, have the most beautiful suit, and somebody else wants, the type of somebody else wants to have the most spiritual enlightenment, or the things that people are pursuing are so completely different that there's no possible way to say that one is wealthier than the other.
Frank, you was talking once about this universality of money, the idea of money, how it's actually have a progressive side into it, because if we wouldn't have this universal idea, we wouldn't be able to compare one value to another. For example, we would never would come up with the ideas of universal minimum income, or we would not say, like, this person is have these necessities, and that's minimum and that's our obligation.
No, I think first of all, because there was a question about money, I think also with money it's the same with poor, the notions like poor, rich, health, etc. I think money in a capitalist society is different kind of money than in former societies. And also in former societies there was not one function of money or one type of money, because as different as the societies were, also the currencies or the money has been. Maybe it does not even make sense to speak about money, but often because it were something else. But I think so for the capitalist society, the primary function of money is that it becomes a universal measure, and it's quantifying social relation. And first of all, it's quantifying the elements to produce wealth, which is quantifiable. So whatever you think about what is real wealth, what is important for me in capitalist society, it's possible to measure the productivity of the elements to produce goods. And I think this is what makes capitalism in a way universal, and which also make these we use money in a capitalist society a way of universal measure, like you have universal measures in natural science, where you have this pure quantified idea of a specific quantum, like second or meter, to quantify the relations of nature. And in the same way, we are able to quantify our own social relations and make it incredibly productive to use these decisive measures we get out of the production process to see, okay, it's more productive to produce a car in this or that way. And I think so the idea of communism has to do something with universal ideas, everyone equal, nobody, so no classes, no power, no difference, etc., etc. And so in former societies, these kinds of universalism has to do with religious idea, with monotheist religions, and the capitalist society is only able to have these kind of universalism in quantifying social relations or quantifying natural relations. And I don't know how to get out of this universalism to a higher universalism, but so I think it's worth to think with these categories. So like universalizing, having the same measure for our whole society and even for our own nature, but using it in a way that's the same. Or I think this is still totally fascinating how a society can be incredibly productive, but the same way to be incredibly productive can turn into its own opposite, not only in totally inequality, in amounts of richness, but also in problems of polarization and going to war, destruction, ideological effects like nationalism, racism, etc. And so I think this is a problem we most stuck in that. So we have some idea of universal socialization, which comes with money, quantification, on the one hand nature, on the one hand social relations, but it also turns out at the biggest disaster and making bigger wars, the forces of destruction than maybe any society we had before.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting, kind of brought me to the idea of kind of rational choice paradigm that was actually the dominant paradigm in social sciences in the 20th century. That sort of actually, maybe it's kind of this idea that you can have some objective measures, that you can have some universal measures, and also that the society is the kind of the perfect sum of the individuals. It actually comes like from like neoclassical economics but what kind of was the kind of the dominant paradigm in the 20th century. But kind of there is some hopes actually, especially I do also behavioral experiments, and what you see in those experiments actually in the experimental situation, people actually do not behave in most of cases as those kind of perfect rational choice agents, or perfect homo economicus agents. They actually they care about like the people actually are altruistic. They for example, just give you an example. I mentioned this experiment about common pool resources, and in the experiment that I did, some farmers who played this game, kind of they always left some resource unused, at the end of the game, and it was kind of completely rational in the kind of experimental terms, because they left like some units of actually in this experiment of water that were kind of lost, gone to the system. No one appropriated this, and they asked the farmers, so why did they left it there? And they said it's for the fish. There was no fish in the game design. And they said it's for the fish, and it was not a single group, but also in the other group, and they said it's for the people who are downstream behind me, but there were no any downstream people behind him in this kind of experiment, in this lab condition, but they are still thinking in those terms, and I think this is kind of the hope, and it's not only, and other people who did similar experiments, they report exactly the same things, that it's not, people do not behave as those, children do behave as rational agents, interesting small children, but with the socialization they also learn those other values.
And maybe they had to.
Interesting.
Maybe they had to because entropy must increase.
Yeah, about entropy, but
They can't use it all.
Entropy is kind of dominating the universe, the physical forces. But it's interesting to think that actually life is against entropy. So actually, if you are alive, it's what is the definition of life, And it's actually something what works against entropy, It's kind of like you reverse this law. It's interesting.
Evolution is just definitely counter-entropic.
Yeah.
But also the universe. Entropy doesn't apply to the universe as a whole by definition. It's not closed system. Which explains the fact that clearly the universe has not gotten less organized since the Big Bang.
Yeah, I think a common conceptual thread or denominator in this discussion about wealth has been measurement. So either the measurement of difference, or the haves, the have-nots, the measurement of excess, of having more than you need, or even the measurement of what is the ideal. In the case of like the indigenous examples of, and I wonder, however, if it isn't necessarily a question of measurement as much as it would be a question of something like ingenuity, the sense of having a lobster is great, but if you don't know that you can eat it, then it's useless, correct? So even if you were in this ideal indigenous society, but the actual kind of difference is knowing that you have a stream full of salmon that you can harvest, and in a real sense, the lack of wealth is ignorance, right? It's in the sense of not knowing that we can resource share in a way to feed the 9 billion, potentially on this planet, and even maybe be in a better kind of equilibrium with whatever rock we're on and whatever rock we're going to end up on, within centuries. And this is kind of like the question of like, do we need to have maybe larger conceptual categories for the larger question of what is wealth, in the sense of like humanity, or post-humanity.
David.
Reframe that.
Yeah. I have something more. So, like the measure, like what is wealth? I've heard, probably you guys know better. There was it's actually originates from ethnographic research. So there were those kind of island societies, and they had this kind of it was called hula,
Oh yeah,
You know?
Islands, yeah.
Yeah, and it was like the measures were like who was the highest person in the hierarchy of this island was the person who was able to destroy the highest amount of goods, It sounds completely crazy, but somehow in those societies you didn't have a hierarchy, because those who were able to destroy the most of goods, they were the highest in the kind of social position, So it was kind of very interesting. It's interesting in terms of like kind of wealth accumulation. That's sort of like this kind of the strive to accumulate, to show your power, drives our society. But there were those other societies where it was kind of the other way around. The measure was how much you're able to destroy, from what you have.
Yeah, that's actually pot lodges. Troparians, you just give them away. But pot lodge, you could even get to the point of destroying it to really. Yeah. That's northwest coast of North America. Because there are certain types of wealth. Okay, this is actually they're up there on the Quackdoodle, for example, on that poster there, where there's certain types of wealth which is considered real wealth, and most of those are things which we wouldn't consider wealth at all. They're like the right to use a certain type of symbol, like the right to put a raven or a killer whale on the top of your house or something like that. But and that comes with a name. So people accumulate 4 or 5 names, and those names each give them a certain symbol and the right to, use this bowl and the right to gather berries in this valley to put in that bowl. And, there'd be a whole bunch of stuff that goes together. And that was what was considered real. And everything else was just considered who cares. So just to show just how important that stuff is, if you get one of those, like I get a new name, the first thing you do is you try to give away as much stuff as possible. And so people just say, here, have 400 blankets, and they give them to people who are their enemies, especially. It's like, I hate you, take 400 blankets. Just to shower them with, material goods, just to show I don't care about that stuff. I'm a great chief. My wealth is like boulders coming down a mountain, knocking you down. And then if you're really angry at somebody, they start destroying stuff. That's when it gets to an extreme point. Especially if 2 people are fighting over the same title. It's like, so then they start burning canoes and setting fire to sticker sewing machines. Just to show who cares the least about other things, which is not important compared to this. So it shows how standards of wealth are really different. In the Troparian Islands, the whole idea is to get a hold of a famous heirloom, and then you give it away to somebody else. Because what's the point of having it? You don't really want it. The point is that everybody knows you have it, so it's only if you give it to somebody else that it circulates so other people know you have it. It's a little like, accumulating art and putting it in a museum. Except everybody did.
It's interesting because although these idea of or concepts of wealth has always been different in every kind of society, you see that societies didn't not only have a problem when there was not enough from something, but also when there was too much. And these kind of society, when they had too much, they needed some kind of use for it. But in our view, in our capitalist economic rationality, it looks like it were a kind of waste and a kind of useless use. So maybe for recognition or for religious fests or parties or something like that. But also in capitalist society you have the same problem. You get not only in crisis if in capitalist society there's not enough, but also if there's too much, and especially from everything which is labeled as wealth. So source of wealth, too much labor forces. you get a problem, too much money, accumulated money, which you can't valorize, you get in problems, too much means of production, too much commodities produced, you have over accumulation, and then you get in crisis. Because in capitalism you have to find a economically productive way to use these kind of wealth. So this is, which on the one hand, this makes society incredibly dynamic and productive. On the other hand, you get exactly because of this way to use wealth in the biggest crisis in history, because what do you do when you have too much people you can't use for further production?
That just leads straight to the question I wanted to ask. How do you, two questions. One was, do any of you want a beer? And the second one was, so put your hand up to the side. And the other one was, how do you personally relate to the wealth of humans or the abundance of humans on this planet?
How do I personally mean?
Well, let's put it like this. So there's generally 1 to 2 different answers to relate to it, but there's some other ones, which is the world is a scarce place and therefore you cannot have that many people, which is sort of an absurd idea, but anyway. And then the second one is the standard capitalist answer. With economic growth, with technological innovation, you'll be able to keep up and deal with the abundance of people. So the question becomes, what is a non-capitalist answer to dealing with the abundance of people? That's what I'm trying to ask.
You want to do that?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
So I disagree with what you said. I don't think we have too many people.
You don't?
Yeah, we have too
I
many.
didn't say
rich
I
people.
thought it was too many people. I asked, well, how do you relate to it?
So I think it's just I think it's not it's false. Not the point. Not the point is exactly I think so. The kind of versus the resource allocation terms, the problem are the rich, no? As I mentioned, in terms of the kind of lifestyle CO2 emissions, like 0.5% of the richest emit the same amount of emissions as the lifestyle emissions as the 50% of the poorest. So you can double the number of the poorest, and you increase the CO2 emissions by like 2.5%. But if you double the amount of the richest, that's the problem. So this is somehow the inequalities are the problem. I think not just the number of people. The problem are how the resources are distributed in the society.
Oh, okay. Yeah.